Hello there, Internet and you beautiful creatures of the beyond. Welcome to the Panda Cave. Today we shall discuss the controversy of artists. Art in itself can be a controversy, and we already covered this in a previous episode. But what happens when you tie the art to somebody's controversial opinion or lifestyle, peculiar lifestyle? And personally, I think this is a case by case situation because I don't know. In general, I think to be an artist means that you have kind of a particularity or you're peculiar in a certain way, and that unlocks your artistic behavior or knowledge or potential or however you wish to call it. Um, And sometimes you can be sort of eccentric, or I don't know, you isolate yourself more from the world, you're less social, or you take a more drastic approach or view of the world we live in. And that's all right. Everybody has opinion, everybody has a way of life. But there are limits, obviously. So where do we draw this line to define what is acceptable and what is not? So let's take a dark and extreme example. So a person who was a decent painter, also loved animals, and also created one of the first campaigns of anti-smoking in Europe. Well, that was Adolf Hitler, and can we take these merits alone and say like, oh, we should take his art and put it in a museum? I mean, you would have to be insane. He was a monster for what he did to the humankind in history, and nobody wants to be associated with that kind of behavior or that kind of mentality and say, yeah, these paintings are nice, but we should put them in a museum. No, that is obviously something that none of us would consciously take a leap forward, because obviously the guy was not uh, oriented toward an artistic life. It was just a hobby for him. But again, we know where to draw the line morally. But then let's look at somebody in more recent years. Let's say J.K. Rowling. And she has a very polarizing opinion about society. But her artistic nature, in my opinion, her opinion should not influence the work she has done on Harry Potter. I mean, everybody has opinions, obviously. I mean, the Harry Potter movies and books were fantastic, in my opinion, and they appeal to many of the fans, and anybody can find an interesting and beautiful story in there. And then you look at the writer and you see, oh, she's so extreme and she has these views and I don't know. I cannot really connect to her at this level. But that's all right. Everybody has opinions, and their opinions do not automatically change the artwork they have done. And obviously, an opinion is not an action that harms anyone. If you have a drastic opinion, it's your opinion, you're entitled to it, and you can speak it out loud. As long as you do not harm anyone, everything is gonna be all right, you know. We can have differences and we can still coexist in this world. And yeah, sure, we might not like each other, but I can still like some of the work that you do. If you're talented, that doesn't change my perspective of your artwork when it comes to opinion differences. um, or let's think of Van Gogh, who had a very tough life, and well, the man was suffering from severe mental disorders, which inevitably went uh, to the state where he suicided. So, should we ban his artwork based on this motive alone? No, obviously. I mean, a moment when an artist starts working on his creation, it's sort of an escapism mechanism for them. They disconnect from the world they may not properly perceive as comforting for them. So they created this universe where their comfort is more assured, or they feel more in tune with their inner selves. And thus, we see from Van Gogh's beautiful work that, well, he captivates the world and the contrast of the world in that he observes in a beautiful light, because he expresses his inner self, not his outer shell or his personality necessarily. He goes beyond that. In other words, all these artists create a fantasy world that does not necessarily represent them, but probably some of their ideals can trickle in. But the life of this world takes the fantasy world of take a life of their own eventually, and a personality of their own, which transcends the artist. And that is an interesting approach. Or let's take another author that has been quite controversial, H.P. Lovecraft. He had an extreme apathy towards the world. Many people wrongfully accuse him of being a racist, but he hated everyone equal. I mean, he was very solitary, and he communicated with very few of his friends. And of course, I'm not trying to defend his lifestyle. Like, it's his way of being. He didn't harm anyone. He just had extreme opinions, and that's his choice at the end of the world. But when you look at his work, you find a lot of elements that are actually anti-racist into them and anti-war. Of course, you have to read in between the lines because he doesn't say it out loud. But I'll take one example of his work, The Mount. And in The Mount, we have the main character who sees himself as the stereotypical Anglo-Saxon who's above everyone and has a statue in the world and achievements and so on. And he's speaking to a Native American, and he sees him as inferior and he treats him as inferior. But the very moment he clashes with the Lovecraftian elements in that world, in that story, he becomes the inferior individual. And everything he knew, everything he thought he was, just instantly dissipate. And he tries to kind of rebel and escape, but he meets a fate worse than death at the end because of his desire. I mean, it teaches you a lesson to not be, you know, not be uncivilized, and try to be more acceptant of the world, more inclusive, more, well, when I say inclusive, I don't mean necessarily like include everybody. Be tolerant. And of course, as I said, think of every artist and every work by case. And these three authors that I have referenced, the H.P. Lovecraft, Van Gogh, and Rowling, I mean artists, not authors, all their work I've discovered before I knew anything about the artists themselves and their lives. And it captivated me. It made me think like, whoa, this can evolve into so many cool things and can be adapted and can inspire other people. So I didn't even care about who created them when I saw this, because my first impact with them was just by reading them or observing them or seeing them, and it was me and the artwork. So I was, well, evaluating the work on its own without knowing the artist behind it. And then when I found out more about the artist, my views about the work didn't change because I already knew the work and what I interpreted from the work and what it inspired me in a positive way. And personally, to this day, I still do not see any elements of their lifestyles to be a connotation of negativity in their work because it didn't trickle. They kept their lives, their real lives, away from the stories. And in general, most artists do not dwell on misery and pain intentionally, and they want to focus on the better things, the things that make them warm and happy inside, and that can develop into these fantasy worlds and these creativity processes that are very outlandish and interesting and beautiful and everything you can be inspired by. So yeah, the idea is just take it case by case. Well, I hope we had a nice session over here and you you got inspired by yourself to work and create things that you feel are worthy of your time and of your interaction with this world. And if you meet people who are controversial and have different opinion than yours, just say, okay, we go each other's way. But at the end of the day, I can still appreciate your work. Okay, guys, stay awesome. See you in the next episode. Bye, 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 bye.